think I turned it on, so maybe everybody can hear me. They usually try to turn it down when I talk, not turn it up. But, it's good to have everybody with us today. Anyway, we have David Watley, and your mother's name is? Carrie. So, told him I had a Carrie. She'll be here a bit. Had a daughter named Carrie, so it's good to have you with us, and all those that are here and those online that may be listening. This morning we're going to be continuing our study, the little yellow book, and it's on the 12 apostles. Now, Derek mentioned this last week. One of the challenges when teaching this lesson, so you have to kind of try to dig down where you can, is that some of them have a lot of mention in the Bible. I mean, there's just lots of things written about them in the books, and some not so much. And so some of the stuff that you have to look at, you kind of just cover the verses here, and see what we can glean out of this. We're on page 8, and the number one question is Philip a Jewish name? Anybody know?
Yeah.
Greek name.
Mine said it was English, German, and Scottish too. I'm
Bobby,
serious. That's what the internet said.
Yeah, well, the internet said it's got to be true, right? But no, actually, I think all the biblical scholars will tell you that he was not Greek. He was Jewish. But the internet, if you want to go down that route, you can look at that. But he did have a Greek name, and that's kind of maybe where some of this comes from. Looking back just through some research I did, it's just he was in an area where there were Jews and Greek people. He had the name Philip. He was born in what town? Do you know? Bethsaida. He came from Bethsaida, which is upon the Sea of Galilee, located on the probably west side of Galilee that he was there. While he was there, a Roman tetrarch, we might have called him a governor or something, because how Rome kind of divided up who ruled what. They had, in a lot of places, they had 4 different governors in a province. And so the tetrarch of that was who? Named was Herod. We have other Herods mentioned in the Bible, but this was Herod of Galilee. And John, let me get you up here. Is Philip a Jewish name? Where was he born? It says, now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter, who was the tetrarch of that region. It says, now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea and the region of Trachonitis, and I don't know, have any idea I pronounced that correctly, and Licinius, tetrarch of Abilene. So they had their territory divvied up there. Philip was one of the 12, and he was mentioned and listed by all 12 of the apostles. Or all 12 of the apostles are mentioned 4 times in Matthew 10, 2 and 4, and Mark 3, 14 through 19, Luke 16 through 13, and in Acts in 1, 13 through 16. And there's several variations of Philip mentioned but he was clearly mentioned in all of them, and everybody accepts that he was clearly one of the 12 chosen by Jesus, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Now, number 2 question there it says, was there another famous Christian with this name? And that is?
Philip the Apostle.
Well, Philip the Apostle.
Sorry, Philip the Evangelist.
Yeah, we're talking Philip the Evangelist. And there may be more written about Philip the Evangelist in the scriptures than we do with Philip the Apostle. I don't think that means anything other than we get a lot of, beginning in the book of Acts, we get a lot of the early church that's in there. But Philip was, he was known as the evangelist. It says, now we get down to number 2, Philip the Evangelist. It says, who was the other Christian with his name? And they, saying, pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and the Holy Spirit, and Philip, Prochorus, I can pronounce those names for me, okay? Nicanor, Timon, Parmenius, Nicholas, a proselyte from Antioch. So he was, we know he's different. It's not the same. There have been people debate in the past that it was the same person, but we know that it's really not, because after the ascension, they chose people to go out, and Philip was mentioned with the 7 that were chosen at the Church of Acts when it came to handing more what people might now call deacon chores, I would guess. Some might say the elders, being of the 7. But that's the Philip that we're, the other Philip that's mentioned is him, and there's probably more, like I said earlier, probably more written about him than that anyone knew. Is there any indication, this is number 3, that Jesus made some effort to recruit Philip?
Yes.
Yes. And where will we find that? In verse, somebody have it, go ahead and read it. 143.
The following day, Jesus wanted to go to Galilee, and he found Philip and said to him, "Follow me."
Okay. And he found Philip, so he went, something significant about that, he went looking for him, didn't he? And he wanted to go into Galilee, and he kind of like, sounded like a special situation with Philip, that he knew him. So he wanted to go and look him up. And what was his sales pitch in 43? See?
Just follow me.
Follow me. That's all he said. And so he wanted him to follow him, and he it says, I was just reading some things, it said this may seem like a trivial detail, but later when Jesus and the disciples came to Jerusalem, some Greek men from Bethsaida wanted to see Jesus. And they came to Philip. This is in John 12:21. So, evidently, that suggests that Jesus knew about Philip. Of course, obviously he did, because he would have chosen him. But he had a special purpose in bringing other people to him, and they went to Philip, and Jesus had him go with him into where he was to reach these people. And verse Acts 1:13, it says, how committed was Philip? How was Philip committed? What would this suggest? He was committed to being an apostle. Strongly. He stayed, and after Jesus, he introduced the people wanting to see Jesus. He stayed and studied up and reached out to others. Okay. Now, there is a point right here that I'll bring up. There are people that have argued falsely that Philip, the apostle, and there's another Philip, might be the same person. That's Philip what do they call him? Philip the evangelist. And I think it's quite clear that there's two different people here. Philip the evangelist, we probably, like I said, we said this earlier, a lot more was said about Philip the evangelist and him reaching out than we know Philip the apostle. But give me a reason why you think, how can we be kind of certain that that's not the case, that they're the same? Debbie?
Because in Acts chapter 6 and verse 2, that's the whole reason that they chose 7 was because the apostles had a different purpose, so it would be would go against what they were doing in and of itself for Philip to say, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, but let me be chosen for this office.
Yeah, that's obviously the most clear reason we have in the Bible, that it's two distinct, different people. It's kind of interesting, Philip, as we talked earlier, is really kind of a Greek name. And so it's kind of interesting that they had two people with that name, but it was definitely different. What are some of the things that Philip the evangelist did that it's written a lot about?
Ethiopian eunuch.
It probably comes to us first as we went, found the Ethiopian eunuch, was sent there, talked to them. But any others you think of? Well, like I said, there's some of the passages, being the 7, he dealt with the church, but he also went out and evangelized, and was well known as an evangelist. That was one of the 7. Okay. So after Philip was chosen by Jesus to be an apostle, what did he do? Okay. He went and found somebody and told him. And for verse 45 it says, Philip found Nathanael and said to him, we found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. So that was a good example of what someone knows about Jesus. Go talking to people that you know, tell about him. And that's something that Philip did. And when he went and found Nathanael, what did Nathanael say in response?
He kind of scoffed. It's like when he found out Jesus was from Nazareth, he said nothing good comes out of Nazareth. So he was pretty skeptical.
Yeah. I think there was some bias and prejudice in that thing there. Just that idea of I don't know exactly why it had such a bad reputation, but there was something about Nazareth that maybe, and one thing we do know, maybe the reason he had Philip with the name that he had, it was a mixed races, the Jews and Gentiles were there. And maybe that particular scenario just had a group of people that weren't very nice people. We might have some judgments on places in the United States even that we might think about what good's coming out of whatever. Put a name in the space there, but there was just something about it that obviously Nathanael didn't think much of when it was there. And comments.
Just seems like there could be a lot left out from 43 to 45. Follow me. Okay, and now he knows he's the Son of God. There seems to be a lot, I don't know what happened, but there's gotta be some time there,
Yeah,
I would think. Or he knew him.
yeah. There was there was obviously there's more detail that we don't know about what the whole situation there is not is gone, but there was a lot of days that Christ spent in that area, and you know, said he was from Nazareth. It was mentioned being a Nazarene, so. But there was just something about that city that would make that statement. Some would do it, and then I don't know if Jews being jealous of the Gentiles, or the Gentiles looking down upon the Jews, or what the circumstance. He just,
I found a note that said that the inhabitants of Galilee were looked upon with contempt by the people of Judea because they spoke a ruder dialect, were less cultivated, and were more exposed to their position to contact with the heathen. I don't know. I just found that in some notes.
yeah,
I've never seen that before.
yeah. Well, Jesus, go ahead, Dan.
Well, when we were studying at school, because between Judea, like in Jerusalem, and the south, you have Samaria, and in Galilee above that, and you know, earlier after the time of King David and King Solomon, you had those two kingdoms split up, and then, you know, the Israelites had been carried off into Assyrian captivity. There'd been a lot that happened, so those down in Jerusalem, they'd kind of been able to protect their culture and stay closer to the law a lot better, and that's probably, you know, they just had that disdain for a lot because the northern kingdom had been more commonly wicked. You know, the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah, they had some good kings sprinkled in amongst their unfaithfulness. All the kings of Israel were bad and unfaithful, and I feel like they kind of just looked down upon them, and that was, you know, probably a source of this contention, that they just didn't really consider them, you know, as close to a true Jew.
Yeah. That's very good. Yeah, and you know, people of different backgrounds and different things. There is a lot of bias and prejudice comes when we look at people from that standpoint. Just even about their lifestyles and everything else. I mean, that's a thing that's naturally done. We obviously see it even in today's society about people, but there is just an interesting remark made by Nathaniel that when Philip told him about Jesus. So that's just an interesting thing. How did Philip answer him? Verse 46.
Come see.
Come see. So he was just kind of a matter-of-factly, come see him. There's something obviously that's really good about Philip that he knew. It didn't take him long to know about Jesus, and he really kind of seeked him out as well as Jesus seeking him out. And we'll look at some of these other things about Philip and his connection with Jesus. But anyway, he was there, and resulted in verse 49, Philip says, and after he was chosen, what did Philip immediately do? He said, Rabbi, talking about Jesus, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel. So what does that suggest?
Nathaniel saw.
Yeah, Philip had no doubt who it was, and I think that would be a good quality as we look at Philip, is that he was really genuine in what he did, and he went and looked after him. Go ahead. Kevin.
One thing I think it's interesting about Jesus coming from Nazareth, just so many different things when you considered about Jesus' ministry. Jesus didn't make it always just, he didn't choose what would have been the easiest path for people to accept his messiahship. It was, I believe, a test of the people's hearts to see how genuine they were. You know, that's what, you know, Philip says, come and see. You know, I don't have to prove it to you. You'll come and see for yourself. Do you have the heart to see? Jesus didn't come from a rich upbringing where people would have necessarily been drawn to him. place. Obviously, people thought less of Nazareth, but obviously, it was a test of people's hearts. Were you good, no matter where he came from, no matter what his history was, when you heard him, did you have the heart to respond to God?
Yeah. What Jesus did when he selected his apostles, probably what caused a lot of issues with his teachings, because they would be looking for leaders of the synagogues and all of the Jewish leaders that were there. That's who people probably would have considered if they did it, if they were going to select these people. But Jesus looked at their heart and knew the heart of these people, and might even say he may have wanted a clean sheet to start with as he taught these people, because he's introducing something that at the beginning the majority of the people did not believe, and all through his teaching he was always countered by these people when he would go somewhere, and wherever he went, the apostles later did the same thing. So these people that we look at, as you look at all the apostles, they weren't probably considered the cream of the crop of the Jewish nation. And when he would go find them and pick them out, he knew their heart more than what, you might go pick somebody that you think's good about something, you don't really know them sometimes. Jesus kind of knew all these people. Even Judas, who betrayed him, he knew what was going to happen there. But so there's something special individually about each of these apostles as we study through them. And, if you were there during this time, I'm thinking you just going, why in the world did he pick John or Peter or what? Huh?
Or a tax collector.
A tax collector, yeah.
In the same room.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, those two verses before 49, when he tells him, come and see it, and when Jesus saw Nathanael coming, he said to him, behold, an Israelite indeed, whom there is no deceit. Because he had just said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And then Nathanael said, how do you know me? Jesus answered, before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. And so that's when he says, Rabbi, Son of God. So anyway, it's interesting how Jesus just kind of, it's hard to tell what his tone was there, but it's almost like being a little sarcastic, and then it really got to Nathaniel's attention. It's kind of interesting, I thought.
Yeah, kind of confirmed him. But there was something in these people, all the 12.
Yeah.
One of them, something bad was really in them, but I mean, there was always something in there that Jesus saw. And to me, he didn't go look for leaders of the general public around there. These are people that he molded into what he wanted them to be, and chose them to see some of the great miracles and things that had happened. Number 5 here, it says, might he have had the same occupation as the first 4 men called? In 144 says, Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. So probably, what occupation did they have?
Fishermen.
Okay, now that would make sense if you think about this a little bit, because where they're located. They were located on the Sea of Galilee, on the west side of it, and probably, don't know what all the occupations of the day, but probably a lot of the meal in the Middle East in that time around there was fish. And so that's one of the things that they did is they were doing that side of things. We'll look at Matthew 18:22. Do we have that up there? It says, now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. And 18 says, while walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon, who's called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting their net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, follow me, and I'll make you fishermen of men. And immediately they left their nets and followed him. Always thought that was something really, really special. And it's kind of hard for us to even think about that Jesus, there's something they knew about Jesus, well, obviously when he came along, but how they just dropped everything and went to him. Today we will do something, we'll sit and think and study and do that. Now I don't know, we don't know, there's not enough written there to let us know that they heard Jesus speaking in various different places, his reputation was. But there was something that drew them to Jesus enough and believe in Jesus enough that they would follow him. Not many people that would go to you in a job and say, here, leave that and come go with me and do this, that people can hardly put their arms around doing that, something like that. But they did. It says, and immediately they left the boat. Don't know if they parked the boat or what they did, but they left it. So and again, we see the character of these great men that became apostles is because of their belief in Jesus and what was right. We see that he had to kind of confirm that with them several times. Okay. In John 6:5c, Jesus asked Philip a question. And that question was, Jesus said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that many people may eat? Jesus said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that people may eat? Interesting question. We know the story, whole story here, but Jesus asked that. And first off, in 1 through 5, what provoked this question?
Well, Jesus was testing Philip,
Yeah.
knowing what he was going to do all along.
Okay. Of course, there's a verse 1 up there that says, after that, Jesus went on his way to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with the disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of Jews, was at hand, and lifting up his eyes and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him. The whole thing is he had to feed these people, or he saw the need to feed these people. They probably weren't all, when they came, weren't very prepared to how long they'd be there, what they'd get. But they were they're eating. Probably, I'm thinking back in those days, they may not be like Americans are today, have all this food built up in them. They probably got hungry pretty quick. So anyway, he had compassion on them, and again, it served another purpose to help people believe in him, the deal he was going to do. But why did he, just look at this question. What did he ask Philip?
I'm looking at a map of the Sea of Galilee, and Bethsaida is on the far north side.
Yeah.
And they're coming from Jerusalem and Cana, which is the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So maybe he thought nobody would really notice that he picked on Philip. Maybe he was asking Philip because he'd be more familiar with the area.
Yeah.
Because it was closer to where, that's the part of the country that Philip was
Well, we know he
from.
was how he was going to feed them. And I think he knew he was going to feed them. So when he asked that question, where are we going to buy this food? I think is that a rhetorical question? What is that? He's going to show him, he's setting up something to show his, that he was the Son of God, that he had the power to do these things.
Also seeing where Peter was at in his faith.
Yeah.
Just showing, is Philip was at in his faith. Is Philip going to say, oh, you can do all things, or is he going to think back to the material and not the spiritual and just think, oh, well, maybe we can go over here and get it. Jesus is seeing what's he going to do.
Yeah. it said, then, hey there, what provoked the question? Well, there was a great multitude followed. And again, they were, what Carol was reading about the distance from these places these people were traveling, they probably just didn't pack food. Probably things were a lot different in the Middle East back in those days. But a lot of these people were probably had heard about Jesus, might have been sick, everything. But I think he was truly concerned, but I think Jesus knew where they was going to get food, right? When he asked Philip that question, it wasn't like, where are we going to get this? It wasn't that much. So it said, B on 6 down there says, what was his purpose in asking this? It would be testing him, yeah. Testing Philip is what it says there, but he kind of tested him. Because it said in verse 6 up there, he said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Now, I think it's interesting that Philip was one he to ask that question to. So I think he was from the area, and there's other examples, and maybe we'll get to that we'll look about Philip. There's something kind of special about him, and all the apostles were special, even in a bad way. One of them was, but they all had things we don't. We obviously know more about, Peter, James, John, and the different ones than we do others. So, anyway.
So, interesting would be that Passover is, what does it say? It was near, and that's that.
Yeah.
I wonder, that'd be kind of an interesting study to go through the scripture when, the Pharisees are starting to point blame, and he says, well, David's men grabbed the heads of the grain and ate it. The Passover's, man's for Passover, that kind of stuff. And how these people had this decision, do I celebrate Passover or do I get somebody healed? So there's that's a question too that was asked. It almost seems like they had to make that decision. Do we celebrate Passover or do I get physically healed? So maybe this is a way to say, another point, Jesus is saying, we can do Passover and you get healed as well.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that study throughout the different, that question comes up a lot in Scripture.
Okay. Number 7, part of that, see. What did Philip answer? And Philip answered, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for them to get a little. So, Jesus again is testing, right? He's testing Philip. And I think that probably says a lot for Philip. I think it's not necessarily a negative. He's using Philip to show what's about to happen. But he evidently had a mind for money, because he said 200 denarii wouldn't do it. Okay. Number 7, who came to Philip asking access to Jesus? Go to John 12, 20 and 21. Yeah. Says, we're on number 7. Says, now among those who went up to worship at the feast were some Greeks. So they came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and asked him, Sir, we wish to see Jesus. So, something about Philip, they knew first off that what? He had access to Jesus, so he was around him, knew him. They didn't have that connection to him, but being one of the 12, they went to Philip to get him to take them and to see Jesus. Why do you think they would be so wanting to see Jesus? Yeah. You know, if you look at in the life of Jesus, every time he would go, whether it was a feeding of 1,000 to 5,000, or whether it was a healing of somebody, whether it was just a message he was delivering, all three of those things caused people to want access to him. Later, people were wanting access to do harm to him, but that was something that people knew about Jesus, that he had something special that they wanted to see. Now, why would they just not go to Jesus? What could that be?
They knew he was Jewish original and they were Greeks.
Yeah.
And they knew how they looked at Greeks.
Yeah. Yeah, it just had to get somebody. Another reason I think he would be so many people wanting access to him that they probably just decided I'd never get in to see him, know him, or anything without someone giving me access to him, to talk to him. And
For
so,
lack of a better term, it's kind of like a backstage pass. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you think you know someone
Yeah.
who can get you backstage.
yeah.
And Philip had a Greek name, so let's go with the Greek.
Yeah, let's go see him. So, anyway, and whom did Philip list to help him in verse 22? Andrew. So he went and said, well, you go with me. Maybe there was something he just didn't want to go by himself to ask Jesus. These people want to see. He said, yeah, you go with me. So they went and told Jesus. Okay, number the B part of that. And how did Jesus respond? Verse 23 and 26.
He didn't have time. He had everything committed.
Okay, switch the slide. There we go. It says, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls in the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if he dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. For anyone serves me, he must follow me. And where I am, there will my servant be also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him. So, that's Jesus' response, I think. Anybody got any comments on that passage?
He was letting those that followed him, it was his time now to be fulfilled and to do the duty of the Father that sent him to earth to do.
Okay.
Fulfill it.
Yeah, you know, Jesus obviously knew what his final task was going to be. And it was not even when he told people that, it was like, no, it's not going to happen. They didn't believe it, but it was, any of the apostles or anybody would really quite understand what was going to happen to him. And so this idea of that it's just signifying his death. That he was going to die, and he was going to tell them that he was just going to be raised. You know, the comments. Why did Jesus rebuke Philip in John 14, 1 through 11? I guess that time. Let not your hearts be troubled. Believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If we're not so, I would have told you that I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and will take you to myself, and where I am, you may also be also. And you know the way where I'm going. Thomas said to him, Lord, we do not know where you're going. How can we know the way? And Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on, you do not know him. You do know him and have seen him. Sorry. Philip said to him, Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us. And then this is the rebuke. Read all those verses. It says, Jesus said to him, have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his work. Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father is me, or else I else believe on the account of the works themselves. So, what's Jesus' reaction to Philip's question? I mean, we know what he says. What do you?
Probably still a little disappointed he doesn't have the faith into who he says it after all this time, seeing all these miracles and works or signs, and having his trust in to be saying that he knows who he is, but yet still questioning it because he's thinking more of the fleshly needs to spiritual thinking.
Yeah. Philip, all the apostles were kind of with Jesus for this lengthy period of time. Every day followed him, everything they did. And Jesus' whole point was teaching the question maybe that Philip asked. And I think that's kind of the response we see here from Jesus, because he's like, why are you asking? Haven't you got it? What I've done.
That's what verse 10 says, believe that I am in the Father and the Father's in me. He's telling them he's deity.
Yeah.
They just can't drop that physical kingdom idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard concept for me to there's Jesus and there's God, but to realize that Jesus is God. He's trying to tell me I'm God. It's like Russ said, I'm not just the son of the deity. I am God. That's the whole idea of the Trinity and the Holy Spirit and all that. It's just a big concept. It's very logical, and you can talk yourself into it, but when it actually comes to grasping that concept, I think it can be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy for us 2,000 years later reading scriptures and having the whole thing for us to get that. Even these that were so close to him, it was something they couldn't grasp, and like Carol says, that's a complex thing sometimes for people to get. And
It took Thomas to actually touch his resurrected body. He said, my Lord and my God. He finally got it. They didn't have that at this time.
Okay, some classroom discussion. Which is the only writer who records the details of Philip's ministry? Anybody know?
Is it the Gospel of John?
Well, Philip's ministry, if it's Philip the apostle, would be different than if it was Philip's the evangelist, because who would have wrote more about him?
Paul.
Yeah, Luke, actually, the writer of Acts, did a lot. Paul did too. But might the incident with the Greeks indicate Philip was a proselyte? I don't know what a proselyte is. It's a convert to Judaism from being a Gentile. I don't know. I did a lot of reading, just historical stuff, and I don't see where there's much debate that Philip was a Jewish person. That he just had a name that was a Greek name. But as Kay said, there's a lot of different. You go out and look. There's a lot of different views on that. Is the fact Philip was named after the Roman Patriarch significant? I don't know. Might have been a lot. I'd have probably chose somebody else's name, but Philip's a good name. He's good enough guy. Jesus chose him, so that's good. I think, again, if you go back and just start there, you could read probably all of the verses in the Bible about Philip the apostle. in very short order, a short sit down. You know, you learn a lot about him. I do think somebody called him almost like super apostle, but I think he was one of the ones that Jesus had a special relationship to. I know he had him with all, but like some of the questions we went through today when Jesus was talking to him. So I think we certainly see a reason why Jesus chose Philip.
What was the answer to one, which is the only writer who records, was it Luke? The details of Luke?
Yeah, the writer, Philip's ministry we don't see too much about, but Philip's the evangelist. We get more, you know. We know the eunuch, Ethiopian eunuch, all that stuff's generally in the book of Acts, which I believe Luke's right. You're right, Luke. Yeah. But just this details is found in the scriptures. Like I said, you can go through and look everything about Philip the apostle, and it's not just chapters and chapters that you're going to find on there. But there is something special about him, and people of the Greeks, we saw where they came to him wanting to talk to Jesus and meet him. So, but I don't know. But we're going to see that in a lot of these apostles as this class goes, because sometimes there's, a lot written about Peter, James, John, all those. There's most of the 12. There's not as much detail given on there. We know they had a purpose, and they all served Jesus. All of them met quite a bad death. They had to give their life for what they did. So anyway.
Well, it could be probably said that Jesus chose Philip since he was a Greek to show that he didn't have partiality for just Jews also.
Yeah, good point.
It could be like an introduction to the other races, that they were open for access to him.
Yeah. I'd read there were some things about his death, but it's all just based on somebody written in 2nd century, so I don't know that we know that. One was he was crucified upside down, and others was he was beheaded, and some said he lived to be an old age. So we just don't know. I guess if they wanted the Bible, they wanted us to know if it'd be in the Bible that we would have that. So anyway, well, thanks for the comments. Next week we'll be doing Nathaniel. Terry will be back.